So as we dive into the story of Ragnarok, probably the best thing to start off with would actually be a little bit of the creation, just to understand, because that's part of the cycle and so forth. So how does Odin and Ymir, I don't know if that's a part of it or not, but then I know that they have to do with, what is it? Yeah, Ymir's body is what they do. They do something with Ymir's body, but I know it's not just Odin. There's two other gods that play a role in that or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, what is the creation for the Norse mythology with that?
So we have, starting with Odin, Vili, and Ve are the
Vili
three
and Ve.
brothers. And Odin, Vili, and Ve. One is considered wisdom, the other one is considered foresight, and another is considered wit.
Okay.
And when they first come to being, they start an immediate wandering around the realms and start naming things like that's grass, that's a flower, that's a human, there's two humans. They literally find the first two humans laying on the ground, unconscious, without breath, just bodies, like somebody had created them and left them there and walked away.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. And so they are those three are known as our creators, not because they fashioned our bodies, but because they gave us Odin breathes literally the breath of life into us. Ve gives us wit specifically to the woman first, so that she can teach wit to the man. And to the man, his brother, Odin, Vili, and Ve, the other one gives to the man the ability to have courage and I believe it was innovation.
Okay. So creativity and courage.
Exactly. That way, he has creativity and courage, and then she can teach him wit. And in that way, the woman technically is the keeper of the man's thoughts, his innermost thoughts, and who he really is, the inner workings, while he is the one who goes and charts their path in the world.
Gotcha. Okay. And she was given just wit, or was it wit and something else?
They were given, let's say, courage, and he was given courage. They were both given the other one, the will, and then she was given wit.
Wit. Okay. And is it will, or is it you said a different word first, so it started with an I. Improvision, or I don't know, you said something different originally.
Yeah, I flipped words there. Yeah, the ability to, like, for example, the improvisation.
Improvisation. Okay, yeah. The reason I wanted to go back to that word was that concept there. Like, so they both have will, wit, and then improvisation, because I changed it to creation, but then I realized, like, wait, no, like, that's only part of it. So, like, he has the improv, like the sparks and so forth, and then she has the wit, and then both with, like, their will, like, that actually makes a creation, actually makes something, because you had, like, the wit to actually give form to the spark, and then the willpower is what keeps that spark going and forming. Yeah.
Turn my sound off there before we get a phone call.
Yeah, totally good. Okay. So that makes sense. So those three create that, and then Odin gave the breath of life, so that we have like the balance of the four there, which in a lot of ways, I mean, you could look at that too, at least in far as like the total like existing as humans. You have the breath of life that comes in there, that kind of has that wind element, but also like it is more of what life is, which would kind of actually be more of a spark per se, but it is like the breath that comes in there too. And so, okay, that's nice. So it's got a little four balance there. So either there's 3 gifts given, there's really 4 gifts given out from the 3.
Yeah.
So I'm only pointing that out because it's kind of that concept of one thing I've learned with a lot of creation stories. It kind of starts off with there's like this one being or this one idea, and then it becomes a second idea, and then so then it becomes, the 2 becomes 3, and then the 3 becomes 4, and then before you know it, you have like the dimensions kind of fold out. But really, like around 4 is where a lot of like the creation stories kind of hit where man is actually doing something. So like this, like man now has the breath of life, has ideas, has a desire, has will. And some of like the Lakota or in the Lakota traditions, and also some of the other Native American traditions, there's that same concept. It's like man was created, earth kind of comes around, and then it's like, then it gets, the blood flowing within it. Then it gets like the breath of life, or the breath of, the wind in the lungs flowing and so forth. And then intelligence kicks on, and so it's conscious. But it's like by the time it hits consciousness, it's had 3 other stages, and then consciousness, and now it's a 4th.
Yeah.
So just interesting. How a lot of them lead into these 4 stages essentially, or 4 gifts in a sense. Okay, cool. So after that, do these 2 humans have names?
They do, but I can't remember because I was just studying Ragnarok and Recycle, and this is in the first creation myth. And they're actually 2 completely different humans after Recycle, and I worked so hard on remembering their names, I didn't work on remembering the first 2. And those were more important to me.
Yeah. Well, and in that sense too, like in the grand creation story or in the grand Ragnarok, cycle creation with the Norse mythology, do their names matter?
Those first 2 don't really, because their initial, the big thing that they have, the big role that they play is just that they're the first 2, man and woman, and that they start the human race.
Okay.
And then that's their story in the Norse.
Gotcha.
From that point on, they move very quickly down to the starts with the V, the Volsung saga.
Okay. Awesome. Okay. Cool. So after the humans are breathed into life, like what happens after that?
After that, Odin, Vili, and Ve, they continue wandering and naming things, but they come across the Valkyrie or the Vanir at that point. And the Vanir, along with, that's one of the realms like Vanaheim. Vanaheim was where the Vanir come from. The Vanir are what become the Valkyrie.
Okay.
They come across them and the dwarves and the giants and all the other races, and they're all just fighting each other. And this is where we get the story of there's the Wild Hunt, there's Bor still going around, joining in the process of just all the realms fighting each other constantly. And where Vili and Ve have no interest in this conflict. They just continue to wander and learn and just experience the world.
I see that piece.
So yeah, it's not my business. Odin is given virtually no choice because he is the one that Bor, his father, chooses to succeed him. And so for him, it's like, no, you've got to come. And Odin says, all right, fine, I'll become the warrior too. He's very good at it, but very quickly he realizes that this isn't the natural order. This isn't how things should be. The Nine Realms should not be constantly at war with Bor and the main gods coming through and just wiping everything out and trimming the grass. That's not how it should be.
Yeah.
And so he conceives of an order of peace and maintenance of the Nine Realms, but he has to overthrow Bor to do it. And when he does overthrow Bor, it's very similar to like Zeus, Jupiter, and a lot of the other stories where basically he's got to chop off his genitalia and that basically does it. That's it. His authority is gone and Odin's able to take over. And Bor is, depending on the story, he's either banished or he is entombed somewhere. And so the idea is like Cronus, that he might come back, but we don't know if he specifically will come back ever in that form or if he's just stuck that way.
Gotcha. Okay. Okay.
And so from there, you have Odin establishes the order of the Nine Realms, and in that last war where he's going around establishing the order, that's where he makes peace with the Vanir by technically capturing Freya and forcing her to marry him, and enforcing that peace by uniting the kingdoms.
Okay, gotcha. So then he kind of creates the Nine Realms, and organizes the Nine Realms.
Yes.
I should say
He organizes
the Nine Realms. I don't want to put creation into that first. There's a little bit different between actually being like I created Vanaheim versus like I organized it, or I placed the elves here. I play, gotcha. Okay, so he kind of organizes it all out and so forth, and and then if, for those listening and so forth, if you want more about the Nine Realms, sorry, excuse me. For those listening, if you want more about the Nine Realms, then like we have an entire podcast where we went through the entire Nine Realms, went through the worlds and so forth, and so you can watch that one after this one for that details. So Odin organizes the Nine Realms, and then I guess what does he do after that, or what's his next stage there? And does he just do it by himself, or does how do the other I don't call them deities, the other creatures, I guess, the elves, the giants, the dwarfs, like how do they play a role? Are they just like, okay, thanks for organizing?
There's a lot of resistance at first because, once Bor is out of the way, a lot of these other realms think, well, then I can go and conquer the Nine Realms myself. And so Odin has to actually struggle them down. The two that he has the most trouble with are the frost giants and the demons of Muspelheim and Surtur, their king.
Okay.
And that legendary beef between them is established here because Surtur's like, I should have been in charge of all of this to begin with. And so the way Surtur sees it is because he's the lowest technical realm. It's this concept inversion where he sees himself as the highest realm because he's closest to the bottom. So him looking up across the rest of the realms to him is him looking down across the rest of the realms. And so it should all be his. Odin basically, when he defeats him, he traps him in Muspelheim and chains him to his throne.
Okay.
And so that establishes that whole thing where Surtur is now obsessed with revenge, which is ignoble and dark, instead of a noble vengeance where he's trying to uphold a greater good or trying to right a wrong. Instead, it's all about just I'll kill them all for what they did to me.
Okay.
And so then you have with the frost giants, he basically just kicks their butts. And the frost giants' whole thing is they were trying to take over Midgard itself, which is where we get our whole frost, our whole ice age mythos with the Norse and their whole thing of the world was frozen for what they say. I did the calculation. It was 9 straight seasons, which is like almost 2 straight years of winter.
Yeah,
that sounds like a mini ice age, which we all know in early 1080 we had a mini ice age where it snowed even in Egypt.
Yeah,
so that could have been right then where their mythos says they were being invaded by the frost giants.
Yes, exactly. Well, and that's the thing to like realize too a little bit. Like people forget this concept sometimes. That, like we're going around the sun. But the sun is going around the galaxy. So like our solar system circles the sun circles the galaxy. And so as that goes, there are times when the sun and our galaxy or our solar system is in places of the galaxy where there are more stars. And so they're not like right super close to us, but they are, a few thousand light years closer than they normally are. And we're not that close to the sun, but we're at that right exact thing that, a few degrees make a difference.
Yeah.
And you can even see like Mars is like, I can't remember what it is, but it's something like in the hundreds times colder than we are. And that's just like that's thousands of miles. So I'm using this as an example because like if thousands of miles can make that big of a difference in temperature, when our entire solar system gets closer to some stars by a few couple thousand or a couple light years closer as it moves around the galaxy, like yeah, our planet gets warmer. And then the same thing when it goes to places that it has less stars around it and it's farther from other solar systems, we have mini ice ages. Like it's part of what happens. And I always want to point this out is like it's not that like, oh, science overrules like spirituality. It's like no, like as this is happening, like it's what creates the stories.
Yeah.
And then how humans deal with it is what creates these myths and these archetypes and these energies. But also at the same time, the concept that like the Earth has a consciousness, the Sun has a consciousness. So also when it goes into some of these areas closer to their solar systems that have consciousnesses, we are in higher vibe states of reality. And like we're more affected by them. And then when we go to other ones, it's darker. So this is kind of like the rise and fall you see like in society where it's like, oh, people are getting kind of enlightened. Or you hear about these like past utopias.
Yeah.
It's that thing. And so even now, even though like yes, humans play a role in like making the Earth a little warmer, we're also in a warmer cycle. Like doing these nature tours up to like Antelope Island, like studying the Great Salt Lake and how much it's gone up and down over the last 17,000 years, you can see clearly like, oh, this is cyclical. You go back 35,000 years and you're like, oh, there used to be a giant river that went through Nevada. But then you zoom out to like 100,000 year gap and you're like, oh, look, this happens. And oh, look, the Earth gets really cold every like 500 years or so. And then it gets really warm every 500 years. And that lasts for about 200 years each time. So it's like cold, 200 years of coldness. And then really warm, 200 years of hot. And then in the middle, it's not like it's like it stays. It's like there's a peak. It's like a crescendo. Yeah. So there's a mini ice age for 2 or 3 years. There's a mini heat wave for 2 or 3 years. You know, I think we just left our mini heat wave, and I'm just saying that from here in Utah where we're getting big winters again. Mm-hmm. And I know when I was a kid, I was short and snow seemed huge. But even adults talk about there being more snow back in the day. And so like 20 years ago. And so I think we've hit our peak of the heat and we're coming out of that. And we're, so yeah, probably in 100 years or so, there's going to be 20 degrees cooler than it is right now,
I agree. What's interesting is if you could just imagine what it must be like to be people that are on average about 4.5 feet tall. And so the tallest person you've seen in your life is probably about 4'9", 4'10" maybe. And you're like, that guy was huge.
Yeah.
And then suddenly out of nowhere, and no one in your living memory or any of your people's living or the 100 or 200 years your kingdom has been around, no one remembers anything like this. Suddenly a winter comes that's so severe, it skips spring and it skips summer, just keeps on going.
Yeah.
And then right in the peak of that, when it can't get any worse, from the frozen sea, a race of huge dudes comes raiding in to kill everything. I mean, it sounds like the Frost Giant invasion.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it sounds 100% like that. Yeah, and these are just
they're just big dudes, and they're hungry too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's funny because it's like in the Norse mythology, where they have the ice giants coming for like they came to raid them, but then Norsemen later become raiders, they are the bigger guys. It's like this might actually have been your guys' actual ancestors that came and raided, and mixed with your race, and then that became who you are, but that's actually like your storyline,
I totally believe it had to have been something like that. I mean, you see that story repeated twice just in the medieval and the Renaissance with the Vikings and the Saxons. They did the same thing. They invaded from the north. They came from a land of ice and winter. They came with their big axes and their huge muscles and their giant beards, and they just killed everything, and then they stayed.
Yep.
And now we have Anglo-Saxons.
Exactly. And they weren't like super bro. And that's the same thing like why the Scotsmen were feared, and then like the Highland Scotsmen, like the Highland Scots were just as big as the normal Scots, but they were higher elevation, so they had to work harder. They had to survive harder. So they're just a little bit stronger. They're just like 10% stronger. But like the Scots come over to Ireland, and Ireland like doesn't have as much high thing, and like they don't have really like snow. Like it's actually like this is what's crazy. I found this other day talking to someone from Ireland is that it hasn't snowed there in like a decade. Like it snows like every decade or so for a couple of days. It gets really rainy. They get a lot of rain, but they don't get snow. But then Scotland gets a lot of snow. Like snow just builds kind of some character. But so it's that idea, like same thing when like Scotland came to Ireland, they were like, who the hell are these guys that are like 6 inches taller than us and 50 to 70% stronger than us? Yeah. Like, what is this? I mean, they didn't think in that kind of math, but it's like, these guys are throwing logs and boulders around for sport. We throw logs and boulders at each other for war.
Yeah. I mean, look at the fact that it wasn't the Irish that had the giant sword. It was the Highlanders from Scotland that were known for having a giant guns level sword. Yeah.
that most men had to hold 2 hands, and that the Highland Scotlands could do 2 hands. Like, did do 2 hands, but they could do 1 hand if they wanted. They were slower, but it was that concept of like, here's this 30-pound sword. Okay. Like, go pick up a 30-pound weight at the gym, and I just want you to like swing it around like a lightsaber like a kid for a moment. Just see how that goes for your arms.
Yeah.
Don't hurt yourself, please.
Everyone else watching you is just intimidated as all hell.
Yeah, like if you can move a 30-pound weight around like, you know, a Jedi with a lightsaber, congrats. Like you've reached Highland, Scotland, Norseman, you know, strength.
Yeah.
I remember being at a the Scottish festival here in Utah, and like one of the big claymores they had there, and like picking it up, and like, okay, I was thinking about buying it, or but I took my picture with it, and I remember trying to hold it one-handed, and like I could do it, but like for the picture and look really great and look really strong, but like my face looks strong because my arm's going like this, and I'm like, hold it still, don't make it blurry, because this is like when we have flip phones, so it's like you don't have super great quality, so it's like if you move a little bit, it gets blurry, and but I remember as soon as I put it down, I was like, damn. It's like I couldn't imagine fighting with that and then wearing armor or fur.
The heaviest sword I ever picked up was a full-size bastard sword with a giant metal skull as the cross-hilt decoration. And I was just like, picked it up, and it was immediately like, oh no. Like I could not even control it. It was like any amount of momentum, and it was not moving in that direction. Yeah. And the blade was about that wide. It was like a ridiculous sword, clearly made for looks only. It was like a Conan sword.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. I don't know if you ever played Dark Souls or not, but like in Dark Souls 3, like when you have a weapon that's too heavy, or like you are too heavy, but if you have a weapon that's too heavy for you and your equipment was too heavy, like you move slower, but when you swing, you like kind of take a half step forward when it swings, and when it hits the ground, it takes you a second to like get it back up. Like they just like let it be like one of those. Okay, now I got it. Like they just, the character doesn't quite make that much motion, but you can tell that it's like, hold on.
Yeah,
that's what that makes me think of. I'm just like, okay, it's a little too heavy for you. If you're a mage class, maybe don't wear a claymore. But back to like actual Norse mythology, or like the Scots, and getting into like, because the Scots, even though it's as big as they were that we're talking about, they had fear of the Norsemen too, because the Norsemen were bigger, and then they were that another 10, 20% stronger, and a little bit more. I mean, they talk about the Norsemen being savage sometimes, but really it's like, yeah, in the running down the hill, and it's like, yeah, anyone looks savage if you're sitting inside your little, house, with a nice warm fire, drinking your ale with, your family, and then you look out in the snow, and you're like, oh, beautiful snow. Okay, it's kind of cold. Then you look out again, and there's like 50 dudes running through it at you. Yeah, they're gonna look savage. Like they're probably like, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold, it's cold. Like they're probably just like, why are we doing this? Why are we doing this?
They're not crying battle cries. They're crying, it's cold,
it's cold. Yeah. There's a YouTube out there that I watch right now called Cinema Therapy, but they reviewed Mulan, and it was just this funny part, like Mulan when she's on the roof and like they shoot and they kill like the main bad guy, and her immediate thought as soon as like the rocket hits her, she goes, get off the roof, get off the roof, get off the roof. And they were talking about how good of like both like human that is and like good writing that is, because that's literally what your next thought would be as a real human, is like, okay, I know this is going to explode, get off the roof, get off the roof, get off the roof. So there's probably them like, run fast, keep running, it's like get warmer here, gotta oh look, there's some guys, raise your sword, oh that's cold, oh so like they think they're like doing these like cool like running, they're like, oh that's cold.
Oh man,
because we have no idea what went on, like what was going through the average person's heads there.
All we can assume is human is still human.
Yeah. But that, again, this is like the aspect that a lot of like both indigenous cultures have and some of these older cultures have, and you still find in people today too. But that impeccability, it's like, yeah, this sucks, but I'm gonna do it anyways. Like, and it's you see this in like martial arts or like working out or even like different practices like in the spiritual world. We've joked about chosen torture, a little bit, like in the practice of like, you're gonna go, okay, you're gonna eat super bland food for like a week, and you're gonna take this one herb that doesn't taste very great to like connect with the spirit of it. Like that sounds fun, but at the same time, like you tell me like, hey, you want to like work with Bo and Sana and like eat nothing but rice, quinoa, and like maybe get a boiled egg every now and then for a week. I'm like, yeah. Like work with Bo and Sana. I love Bo and Sana. That's a plant that I've worked with. So like the concept is like a little bit of chosen torture into that, like with the spiritual realm, but it's like there's the impeccability there. It's like, I'm choosing this. My intention is X, so I'm willing to go through Y and Z to have X.
There's a lot more of an extreme tenacity with the Norse cultures with that. Because if you think about it, and you're in the Mediterranean where there's barely a winter when you get one unless you're in the mountains, and you're out there and you've got to go on a hunting trip. That hunting trip involves, you've still got to keep warm, but it's not nearly the degree of I've got to trudge through 5 feet of snow for 3 days just to get to the right valley to hope to shoot a moose. And that moose might kill me. A bear might kill me at any point in time in the journey, especially on the way back.
Yeah.
And then there's wolves, there's coyotes, there's rival tribes, there's random berserkers, and then or just a criminal who's out to gank you. So it's just like that is the world that they're living in, and so everything is that much more intense because, well, the environment is literally trying to kill you too, and it's very in the cold. It's very good at it.
Yeah.
And usually these guys are out there pretty much alone because it's just there's not many people out there in those Nordlands among all the ice and snow. They're either in their community or they're out in the boonies alone.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, and then like I said, like the way back is probably more dangerous than the hunt out. Like yes, it's intense and sort of, but like on the way back, like you're carrying a fresh kill. Like, and in those days and age, like nowadays when you go hunting, like you quarter it in the field to like help it not spoil. And that might have been something that like kind of happened back then, but in general it was like you bring it back and then you do all that stuff, and also because they're planning to be back very much sooner than usually. Like when you go out hunting, camping, if you're that deep that you need to quarter it, you're going to come home, camp, then pick up camp the next day and then come back. Like the only time you see people in Utah driving around with like a deer in the back of their truck is if it's like, oh yeah, you got that today and you're going home today to process it. Like, but if there's even a day in between, you have to do it out in the field. So I'm bringing that all up in the concept of like, these guys are bringing back this thing that is probably still slightly bleeding, even though it's done instead and smelling. And it's like, okay. And if you're, like you said, a berserker or a criminal, it's like, what fresh smell, and like you can hear people walking through the snow still. And then you have the wolves, and
they're even easier to see in the snow.
Yeah. And like wolves are going to go after that, and then bears too. Like and we see it in Yellowstone. Like bears go after moose and bison only when like a moose or a bison gets close enough to the bear that the bear thinks it can get away with it. Then it will chase it and go after it. But even then, half the time they get away. But also, like if a pack of wolf takes down like a moose, and then a bear comes upon that, like the bear will do whatever it can to chase away the wolves. If it thinks it can get away with it, it will. So I've seen the concept too. It's like, oh, you killed a moose and you're a human carrying a moose? Well, I can just trot along with you for a while, and then like once I notice you start looking a little weak because you're getting tired, and or, then they'll come in. Or if it's just like, oh, hey, I smell food, and it walks upon you, like you're not even being hunted by the bear. You just happen into it.
Exactly.
Because you now smell like fresh kill. So interesting, like all that like builds that character, builds that strength, and bring that back in, like the intention of that, the impeccability of I'm going to go into the snow, I'm going to get this food for my family and my tribe, I'm going to bring it back, I might die, and it really doesn't sound that fun or exciting. And it is a survival need, but there's also that concept too of like, well, bigger the animal I catch, least often I have to do this. So then there's this desire to be the biggest, the strongest, the fastest, the best at this, and then I'm sure there was a few crazy guys out there that were like, yeah, I'll go get a little deer, then hopefully a bear comes at me so I can bring a bear home.
Yeah.
I'm sure there was a few of those guys. I know enough crazy people here that like, I'm sure there's somebody that would have. So that's the intention. But like coming back to like a little bit of like Odin, and so now he's created the 9 worlds, the 9 realms, sorry, and Bor is dead. Like, what is his intention? Like, what is his intention from here forth?
His intention is he wants to establish that order, but he wants prosperity, he wants peace, and he wants where he chooses his home to be the source of that. But he also wants to provide a ultimate goal for valor, for strength, for all that stuff, for everyone in his realm to work towards, to uphold that. And it's also because he becomes wise enough after the whole tree situation where he hangs up on the tree. He becomes wise enough to know that, oh, everything's going to end anyway. There's a recycle that happens, there's a Ragnarok that happens, and the only way we even have a chance to withstand that is if we every single day prepare for it like it's tomorrow.
Gotcha.
And so he goes about. That's why he ends up building Valhalla. He gathers once he has his wife Freya. He also gets her brother. He gets his brother, their family. They get wives. They start marrying giantesses. Of the giant races, there are technically 4 giant races, just like the 4 elements. You have earth, ice, fire, and fire, and air. Wind, yes. Okay. And between those 4 kinds of giants, you have them starting to intermarry. And realistically, only the frost giants and the earth giants really have a problem with the Asgardians from that point on. And even then, it's not even with the earth giants. It's not all of them. It's just certain ones are like refuse to let go of the beef. Well, with the frost giants, it's almost all the frost giants because they wanted to conquer Midgard and were stopped. Yeah. So of course they've got a beef.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, it isn't like what's I just had his name a second ago. Look, they show him in the Thor movies, but he's also a real, guardian of Asgard, the guy that like keeps the gate, like with the big sword. Heimdall, yeah. Isn't he like partial fire giant or something like that too, or like yeah?
Yeah. So several of the gods the major Asgardian gods are part something else, and so I believe he is part fire giant. He is known for having flaming eyes, his great sword, and his great golden horns.
Yeah.
Where again Loki has the brass horns, is also known as a fire, as an aspect of fire.
Yeah. Because that's the thing that like Marvel, kind of twisted for Hollywood's sake or entertainment's sake, made Loki part frost giant, but actually Loki's not part frost giant. Thor is part frost giant, and Loki is part earth. Or am I wrong? Or
it's the other way around. Where and again, yeah, because Marvel messes with this. You have Loki is part. Loki is part frost giant. Thor is part fire giant, and it's because of who their fathers are.
Okay.
And where Marvel says, well, it's because his father's the king of the frost giant realm. No, it's that Thor's father is technically Odin. Odin is technically a fire giant, but Loki's father is unknown. And that's why we're like, well, he's part frost giant. So, but who's his father? Marvel made up it's the frost giant king.
Gotcha. Okay, we don't know who his father is. And okay,
the thing to
they
remember,
do share the same mother though.
No, actually,
no, because
with Loki and Thor are technically adopted, and only Odin knows their true parentage. But Thor is Odin's son, but Freya is not his mother, and Loki is technically Freya's son, but Odin is not his father.
Gotcha.
But they're both adopted.
Okay.
So it's like it's one of those things where all of the Norse stories are disjointed because some were lost.
Some were lost, yeah. So and it's interesting because it's like technically in that situation, it's Odin adopts Loki and Freya adopts Thor.
Yeah.
Like because the bloodline is like I mean, I guess you can adopt your own biological child, yes, legally, but it's also like we don't refer to it that way. Or like you wouldn't say like, like the dogs that I have, I wouldn't say I adopted my dogs.
Right.
Like, even though they're not bloodline. I'm not saying that I'm connected to like my bloodline, but like my nephews and nieces. It's like if I became an actual parent of my nephews and nieces, I might say adopted. But in the concept of like if I had my own child, like your own son, like Dante, like if you were to be like I adopted Dante, it's like what are you talking about? That makes no sense whatsoever.
One day, 8 years after he was born, I decided he was mine.
You decided he was mine. Yeah. Oh, that's great. Okay.
It's so bad. That's exactly how a king would think.
Yes, exactly how a king would think. Yeah. Okay. So there's a little mix up there. It's like this is where it gets like it's like where I've always gotten muddied with like the Thor mythology, or not Thor mythology. Well, I guess he is Thor mythology, but like Norse mythology is because like I learned it in high school, got really interested in it, like read books about it. It was something I always kind of studied, but also like had read the comics as like a preteen, of Marvel, and then like so those were always a little mix, and then it's like fast forward and it's like I still like watch stuff and like enjoy Norse mythology, but it's like I haven't like not until we started doing this podcast did I start reading the Norse mythology again. Mostly it was like, oh yeah, I like Norse mythology. Oh, here's a show on Netflix about it. And like I knew the whole always every time it showed, I'm like, okay, it's a tweak of it. And then you have Marvel, where I always knew was like a tweak of it. But that tweak was just enough to like, okay, wait, which one's the real story? Like which one's the exaggerated, made up version of it, the alternate universe kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like as just an example, like the live action Avatar, like is actually really good. Like the new one that came out on Netflix, if you haven't seen the anime. Yeah. So it's an alternate universe, an alternate world. It's a great story.
Yeah. I agree. It's an alternate universe, yeah.
Yeah. And it works out great and wonderful. But if you've seen the other original, it's a little different. I say because I have my friend Drew, who's he's in his 50s, one of my best friends, but he didn't grow up, watching Nickelodeon. He was, when I was watching Nickelodeon, he was in his 20s opening his, coffee business for, his first business. We're very different in that sense. So like, to him, the live action Avatar is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Which I think is still solid. Like we're not talking about the movie that doesn't exist. We're talking about just the Netflix series.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyways, I went off on a tangent there. So pulling it back to like, how those stories have kind of mixed, Marvel's mixed it up and we're kind of sticking to more of the actual Norse mythology. And so that's why, I'm like, oh, was he a frost giant or is he not? Those kinds of things.
Exactly. The first thing I would always say to anyone looking into the Norse mythology to remember is you have 4 regions in the Norse of the world. And in those 4 regions, you not only have like dozens and dozens of tribes, but just in Germany, you have 30 different versions of what it is to be German. And the Germans are about 1/4 of all of the Norse. And so I like to break down like you have the Germans, you have the Franks, and then you have the Celtics and you have the Gaelics. And between those 4, you have everything.
Gotcha.
And everyone's interactions, all their little tweaks to their stories, all of it's there. And so all the way up into Norway too, because they're all extensions of the Germanic side, where the Celtic and Gaelic side literally traveled across Europe, across Spain, across France, across Great Britain too. And that's why they all have a mixture of the Celtic and the Gaelic.
Okay, gotcha. So even like kind of like that quarter Germanic, that would include like Iceland and Greenland, and then Norse and Wales, or I said Norse, I meant Norway. Norway and Wales, Scandinavia, essentially, that connects to the Germanic stories. That's why those are so similar. Okay, and then the Gaelics are slightly off, but I mean not off, different.
Exactly. It's like regional variant.
And based on like where they went and how the temperature showed up. Like we've talked about this before, like, the way certain cultures viewed God or gods had a little bit to do with like the weather and the way things played out for them. Abrahamic faiths are very much like, you must obey and keep the commandments or you'll die. You must live a certain way or the sun will kill you.
Yes.
Like, literally you will die from the sun. And then, South America, it's like, oh, well, like God loves you and she's very nurturing and she gives you all this life because, there's plenty of abundance in the jungle of fruits and vegetables and medicines from the sun and the water. And so, of course, the sun and moon love us, and they're not trying to kill us, just different cultures. And, so same with the Gaelics and the Norse, it's a little bit different. Okay. So after things kind of settled down a little bit, because even after this, the Nine Realms are established, the Frost Giants, and you said the Earth Giants, or is the Frost and the
Frost Giants and the Earth Giants are the ones that really
that still have conflict.
Yeah.
Okay. And they kind of continue to have conflicts kind of always until Ragnarok, essentially. Okay. So after, the creation of the Nine Realms, well, I guess to back up. So Odin does this whole, like, get the runes, all of this stuff before he goes on his journey with his brothers.
No, that
so
all
on
happens
the journey of
before the establishment of the Nine Realms. That all happens first.
Okay.
And it's in the establishment of the Nine Realms that he realizes very quickly he does not have the wisdom to keep this together.
Okay.
And so if you look at the very first sagas, right, even before the Volsung saga, you have the gods and the giants. They're trying to get along, but because certain giants and certain gods hold on to their beef, they create more new problems every day.
Okay.
And so
this is kind of like he has become the ruler, become the king, and goes, yeah, I need to level up.
Yeah, this is a little outside of my control now.
Okay.
So that's when he goes to Mimir, who is the wisest of all of the Asgardians and the wisest of all of the giants. And he asks him specifically, how do I attain enlightenment? How do I get such wisdom that I can solve all the problems of my realm, but also the 8 other realms too that I've set to order? And in a way that it will help even the little animals, even the stones, that I can help them too.
Okay.
And so Mimir's like, well, there's only one kind of enlightenment that gives, and that's the enlightenment from beyond this life. And so I can help you get that. So he instructs him on the process of hanging upside down on Yggdrasil, the world tree, spearing himself to the tree with his spear, Gungnir. And through that process, Odin, 9 days, 9 nights, is able to perceive the runes themselves, and he is able to write down the first set of the Elder Futhark in his own blood, and which is why traditionally, when you're using the Futhark magically, you write in red.
Okay, interesting. Okay, and then who's Mimir?
Mimir. He was a giant that was considered the wisest of the giants. That when the Vanir and the Aenir, so the fire giants and the air giants, combined their kingdoms, he was the wisest of all of them.
Okay.
The problem is him and his one protege, who was the god of justice, I think, Forseti. They both didn't like to just tell all, because wisdom should not just be tell all. And so Mimir, you have to ask him the right question or else he just wouldn't even answer. And so eventually they chopped his head off, because when he did give an answer, when they forced it out of him, the answer pissed them all off and led them all into, because they didn't understand the answer, it led them all into a situation that screwed themselves.
Okay.
And I think it had to do with the golden apples. And because of that, they chopped off Mimir's head in punishment, but Mimir did not die because he was enlightened already. And so instead of burying his head or burning it, they placed his head next to the pool at the base of the tree, and they named it Mimir's Well. And Odin would periodically go back to Mimir's Well to speak to Mimir's head and listen for an answer. Only when Odin was in a situation where his own wisdom couldn't help him, he'd go to Mimir and ask him. Where Forseti would speak in so many riddles that Forseti was eventually banished. So you banish the lawmaker. And then the first Runaljold, the first human mortal rune master, found his way to Mimir's Well and managed to get an answer out of Mimir, which was Mimir literally spoke to him, the Elder Futhark, and the man understood it. And that was all the wisdom he needed.
Okay. Interesting. Okay.
So Mimir is the source of that divine knowledge, and he just appears. There's no he was created by this guy or he was born to this thing. He's just there. And so when I look at that, it's supposed to Ragnarok recycle. he just appears, and then they kill him and they leave his head there knowing that he technically can't be destroyed. The alignment he represents can't be destroyed, can't be removed from the earth. It can only be silenced in a way that it can still speak to you if you know the right question.
Gotcha. Okay. Which I mean is kind of this repeating theme a little bit with like these super powerful gods, kind of like Bor, or you know, in Greek mythology, like Kronos. Like it's like you can't destroy time. You can't destroy the god of time. You can't destroy the quote unquote the god of wisdom. But you can seal him. Exactly. So you can hold him back a little bit. Just use anime as an example. It's like the in Naruto, they have like the Juriken. Like there's these 9 Juriken, these like tailed beasts that are parts of like the once the 6th path sage. I won't go into all that, but like the concept too is like you can't actually destroy the Juriken. Like there's a human that holds a Juriken inside of it and it's in there, but it's like when that human dies, the Juriken doesn't die. I mean, if the Juriken does die, the energy just gets rebirthed somewhere else, and eventually, it might take some time to get back to its once powerful self. But it's like it never. And all that's really a representation that like energy can't be destroyed. Yeah, it can just be moved. So anyway, so he comes to the well to get the knowledge. But essentially, after he, his whole process, like he's got the 9 realms, and like he's Odin, but then he doesn't really become like the Odin that like people like kind of fear, or maybe not fear, but like as in like gains like ultimate respect until after he gains this extra wisdom. And is there like a kind of like one big act or something he does that kind of like, I know he doesn't bring full peace to the 9 realms in like one swell swoop, but there is a time where it kind of comes to, it's like, hey, this is now the general flow.
What happens is they continue to have problems with the giants, but he continually now is able to just with one-liners fix it. Okay. With just, everyone, or when it's a situation that cannot be fixed with words or whatever, and he now has the ability, the wisdom to say, hey, Loki, why don't you go to the frost giants with your knowledge of secret pathways and tell them this weird thing? And Loki will be like, well, that'll screw with them. Then he'll do it, and it will fix the problem.
Yeah.
And so because Odin knew that it's those words, when delivered by that guy specifically, will somehow create this other effect that fixes the problem. Okay. Which he now has that level of wisdom and foresight.
Gotcha. Which is Odin's sight, the multidimensional view where it's like you can see all the pathways that lay out. Like I always think of it like a giant orb, but it has like tree branches all over. Like all these tree branches make the orb. And so they all branch off and they all connect, and it's like this can be going this way, but if need be, this path can come here, and but you can see all that. Okay, so then things are much more resolved. Okay, is that kind of like where the creation kind of like wraps up before we dive into like the other like side stories that kind of come off on this? Because I know like Freya comes into play here, but was Freya anyone before she was Odin's wife? Like I know she was somebody, but I mean, like, does she have significant stories before marrying Odin?
Her significant story was that her and her brother would basically, with leading the Valkyries, she'd go around and make war on the other realms, trying to take territory. And she was, other than Odin, the best at it. Other than Bor, she was the best at it. The Valkyries were the best. Everyone feared them. They were undeniably the best. So much so that when the Aesir finally went to battle directly against them, they nearly lost. And that's how Odin managed to capture her, was he lured them into Asgard. They thought they were coming into that was it. They were going to decide the battle and win and take it. And then he managed to separate her from her Valkyries by being like, oh no, I'm running away. And she's like, well, I'm going to get you, you coward. And then he whipped it around and was like, I've got Sleipnir. I wasn't running. I was setting up the battlefield. And he trapped her, captured her, and said, the only way out of here is if you marry me. And if I remember right, it was because he got her to agree. Yeah, that's what it was. He said something big like, the only way out of this is if you agree to my demands. And she goes, well, okay, I'll agree to whatever your demands are. And he goes, my demands are you marry me. And it's one of those things like, dang it. No.
But also like, because she's so battle art and like he's, like it's the strategy in the battle art that like, I mean, I don't know how Freya felt, but like you could hope that it was a little flirtatious maybe in that sense, a little bit of like, like it's this, okay, you're a battle person. So I'm going to impress you by battle. I'm not going to bring you roses and flowers. And
that establishes the Viking way, like you could call it, of courting, where it's not, you don't butter up the girl you're trying to court in the Viking culture. You show her how badass you are. And if the gods grace you by putting her in a situation where you get to save her, that's it. You're Thor now to her. You're it. Gotcha. So, and they Vikings, they really, Norwegian people would really like look for that opportunity to really stand stand out to the maximum if they're trying to court somebody, so that the person would look at them and say, you're worthy of the sagas. In my worldview, you are now the legendary Viking. Yeah. And in doing that, they'd ensure that for the rest of their lives, as long as that man showed up that way for the rest of their lives, she would never stop seeing him that way, and she would have the utmost loyalty. Yeah. And it would be that Odin Freyr relationship, because that's the only reason. You could say that, well, I'd rather marry you than die, but realistically, she agreed with a smile. She went to the wedding with a smile. All that, she agreed with it, because deep down she knew, this guy's the only person in the 9 realms that's even remotely worthy of me, and he just bested me at my game.
Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. Well, and then you do see this a little bit as it plays out in like the Viking show that was on the History Channel. Like Lagertha and Ragnar, like they get along really great. She is a shield maiden, like, and she also becomes like one of the most badass shield maidens that ever exists, and he's fully in love with her. And really, when he goes and gets like his second wife, and like him and Lagertha's relationship falls apart, he only gets a second wife because the seer told him he would have many sons. And so he's really just looking for someone that can have sons for him, because Lagertha can't for some reason. She had Bjorn, and then can't ever have a kid after. Like, just never happens. Everyone ends up as kind of like a miscarriage, and that's sad for her. And so like he goes and gets this other girl, but you even see that like by the time those kids that he has with her are like 4 and 5 or 7 and 8, and like he goes off to raid and goes off to do these things that she doesn't. Like, yeah, she's staying with the kids, but also even before that, like she never goes with him, and she never like after that kind of goes with him, and like there is like a distance, and like you can almost tell that like at some point there wasn't ever really love. There was kind of this lust thing, but because she doesn't have a battle spirit, like she's not proving anything to him either. And so it wasn't one-sided. It's like there is this double-sided, like you both have to be ferocious, and so like that relationship falls apart, later on.
What's interesting is, and we mentioned this when we were talking about the Sigurd saga and the ring cycle, about how you have characters that they know what they need to do, but they're hesitant to go through with it and to fully live up to what they know they have to do.
Yes.
And if you look at Auslag, was her name, she is a direct descendant, I believe, the direct granddaughter of Sigmund from that story. And so her father, I believe, was Sigurd, which was that would make her the great granddaughter, because Sigurd was the son of Sigmund. So yeah, she's a direct descendant, and everyone talks about her like she's like a reborn Brunhilde who was a warrior maiden, and yet she doesn't do any of that, not even close. And so there's this idea of you were born to be this, but instead you only became that, and so things didn't work out well at all. Where you wonder if she had decided to be like her grandparents and just went full warrior, if everything would have worked out, and to her becoming like another Lagertha, and would have had a completely different history. Maybe her kids would have turned out different. Maybe Ragnar would have turned out different. Like everything, but. Like I said, all 3 of her grandsires had that same problem of they had a tremendous issue with living up to what they knew they had to do.
Interesting. That's true. Yeah. They know what they had to do, and that's like what makes them like the second best, or the third best. And it's like, yeah, you're honorable or you're okay, but not the legend, which is that one moment they're living for, the one thing they're living into.
If you're destined to save the kingdom, but all you do is save your neighborhood, you're doing good, but you're not doing what you were supposed to do. You're not fully magnifying yourself.
Gotcha. Okay. And so then kind of after, Freya marries Odin, and so forth, like, I mean, is there animosity between them later on and so forth? Or
that's a debate between scholars, because there are actions where you could claim, why would you do that if it's just going to screw up his plan, or if it's going to make him angry, if it's going to mess up or cause Thor to go through this other thing? And people like to think like with the Hera Hercules thing, where with Hera in Greece, she hates all of Zeus's bastards and tries to mess up all of them as soon as she finds out that they're connected.
Yeah.
So they start to, I believe, wrongly attribute the same relationship to the Norse, because what I've read is, from what I've read, Freya, when she has direct interactions with Thor, they're helpful interactions. They're very good interactions.
Yeah.
And so there's not a single moment where I can see her banishing him, cursing him, nothing like that, or sending somebody after him. Like I've never seen that before. So I think she is 100% like again, to use the Thor movie is from Marvel, is that she's very benevolent, very connected, very loving, acknowledges that you might not be my blood son, or we might not know that that whether or not he's her blood son or not. She still treats him as though he is regardless, which is why I believe people are the belief is so adamant that she represents love itself to the fullest extent.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Because in the story of like Zeus and Greek mythology and so forth, like when that falls apart, like when the gods have their epic battle and so forth, Hera kills Zeus. Like she's the one that kills Zeus. Like that's not how it plays out in Ragnarok. Spoilers when we get to Ragnarok. Freya's not doesn't do anything vicious like that to Odin.
She's not mean.
Like, you know, and like that's also how the whole battle between the gods start. Like there's an argument, and then like Hera, and then like they're like, okay, we'll go talk about this, we'll figure it out. They're divided, and then Hera's just like, I'm sick, and like he has like another bastard. Like she finds out about another bastard,
yet another one.
Like at this point, and he tries to play it off like it's Apollo's, because like when she goes to like see him physically, Apollo like covers for him. He's like, I'll cover for you, Father, because she can just see that there's a god, and they're so close in vibration and energy that when she shows up, it's Apollo, and the woman is still acting semi scared of Apollo. And so she figures it out there, and then like, you know, but it's like, wait, if you guys just like hooked up, why is she like a little freaked out at you and more scared of me? Like, 'cause she knows I'm Hera, so like, but if you're just my son, she's like, oh, Mom, sorry,
oops.
Like,
but terrified is the wrong reaction.
Yeah, terrified. You know, like respectfully nervous is the appropriate reaction to this. Not you're afraid I'm about to kill you. Okay, why? Oh, it's my husband. Well, you're just a human bitch.
Who's the one guy I know.
Yeah. You're the 12th time this has happened to, you know, shame on me. Anyways, but yeah, so coming back into that, I guess, you know, a little bit of before we dive in, like, as we continue on a little bit with the creation here and like kind of building up the story and like the main players that are going to play out here, some of like the other major gods that are going to play a role here, you know, would be like Thor, Loki, if I just lose Tyr, Heimdall. Yeah. So I mean, like, a little bit of in that concept too. Well, first, like, what I missed this in my memory all of a sudden. Like Freya, what race is Freya?
Freya's Vanir, so from Valheim.
From Valheim, yeah, okay. And yeah, so she's not, but that's why she has her own set of Valkyries. Okay, gotcha.
The air giants.
And then so then, Tyr, like, is he older or younger than Thor? And like, who are his parents?
Tyr is older than Thor. He's full-blooded Asgardian. We know is Odin and Frey.
Okay,
and gotcha. So he represents courage and victory.
Gotcha. Okay, awesome. Any cool like origin stories or stories about him before Ragnarok? You know, like that kind of give him like, why is he important and why does he get to represent Tuesday?
So he was Tyr was given tattoos on his arms that were supposed to give him unbreakable arms. And his strength is the strength of victory itself. And so he cannot be beaten. As long as his battle is righteous, he cannot be beaten. And so he embodies, when I say courage and victory, it's not only those two, but it's your cause is right. So no matter what the odds are, you're going to win anyway, because when your cause is right, your arms are unbreakable. You will succeed in what you're trying to accomplish. And so with his unbreakable arms, he's known for being willing, very happy to get in there and scruff with people, more so than even Thor, where Thor is portrayed more of like a madman, where like if you set him off, then he'll go after you.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Where Tyr with a smile will be like, "Let's go, boy," because he's just itching for just the not the conflagration. It's more like the opportunity to show who's strong, the opportunity to prove that he can win.
Yeah. Gotcha.
And so that's mostly what you want to remember with Tyr. And in every other interaction he has in all of the sagas, when he shows up, they win. Every time. And there's a lot of giants that are like, whoa, Tyr's here, I'm not going to fight him. And they just give up.
Gotcha. And he's like, yeah, he's like an amazing fighter, but it's also more of like, because he enjoys the fight and he's got like the thrill, he's got the fire with it. He's, you know, passionate about it. You know, it's, you know, in some ways like, you know, Thor is the thunder, but like in a lot of ways, like Tyr's kind of like the lightning, like he's like the spark, like he's ready to go, like he's going to do the damage. Like Thor can do damage too, and like it's also, you know, I'm not saying Tyr has any lightning powers, but it just kind of like reminds me, like he's before Thor, like he was born before him, but he has that reputation of like, I'm not going to get into battle. Whereas like I don't know too many stories, and I don't know all the Norse stories, but like I don't know too many stories where like that's the story with Thor. It's like, oh, it's Thor. I could probably like you know how cool and what a legend I'd be if I take down Thor. Do you know like what I would be? You know, and like, you know, and like you see this a little bit in anime a little bit too. Like it just like gives me the idea of like Tyr's, like he makes me think of like Gogeta. Like he's a mixture of Vegeta and Goku. Like he's that like I'm ready to battle at all times, but I'm like a little prideful, a little arrogant, but rightfully so, because like the only people that can put me in my place are like my dad and my mom and like maybe my brother, you know,
on a really good day for him.
Yeah, like on Tuesday, like every other day of the week I got it, but on Thursday, Thor's got me. Like on his day, he's got me. So like, you know, 1 in 7 battles, Thor will take me. You know, that's kind of Tyr's mentality, where Thor's like, I could take you anytime I want, but like I'll humbly let you have your
exactly
your place.
Thor is very shock and awe oriented.
Yeah. He's like, I'll just wait for the day when we have to, you know. But yeah, okay, so cool. And then
And so
keep going.
you have Tyr with his arms, and then Heimdall has a great sword. And that can cut through anything. And so the idea with why he has his sword, why it's so sharp, is he's supposed to be able to, if any of the one realms gets so bad it has to be cut off, he can actually prune the branch off the world tree.
And he's given a sword, not an axe, like a giant great sword.
Exactly, a giant great sword with that singular purpose of is just to do that. And so every one of the gods is given something. I skipped Odin. So Odin has the spear, but he also has Draupnir, the golden ring, which many people believe that Draupnir is the ring from the Ring of the Nibelungen. That's the same ring.
That's the same ring.
Because it's the ultimate power of Odin, is all the prosperity, the light, the blessings, the power, all of that stuff that he can do, the miracles he can work, are because of Draupnir, the ring. He can't just snap something into being. He's not that kind of omnipotent.
Yeah.
Because their whole culture is about being a craftsman and crafting things out of your hands and out of your deeds. So with his ring, the ring was crafted that way as purity and pure power, I would say, when Odin is using it, it is the pure intention of creation that it embodies.
Okay.
And then he uses it to make these things, these miracles just happen.
Yeah.
And
gotcha.
so
it's a crafted thing that someone else crafted, but in that same kind of concept too, of like, you're about being a craftsmanship, you're about how you show up. It's kind of this idea of like, yes, it's a physical object, but you're channeling the divine energy that you also are. But it's like, in order for this divine energy to come through, it's like you need Odin and the ring. You need Odin and the spear. You need Helheim and the sword. Like the sword could do it on its own, but it's like not everybody could do it. Just like Thor and his hammer. Like, other people can pick up Thor's hammer per se, but no one can wield it quite like Thor, and no one can do all the things. Like no one can unlock all of Mjolnir's abilities but Thor.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So just because we're already on Odin a little bit here too, like where does he get the spear from?
The spear is very interesting. It took me a lot of work to figure this one out. I was researching just his spear, his eye, and the runes as a part of another project I was working on, trying to just really get into the symbols and what all that means. And the spear is fashioned from 3 specific things. The wood of the shaft is fashioned from Yggdrasil itself. And so it is the world tree, which explains that when he spears himself with it, it becomes the 10th branch, because it already was a branch of the tree.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay.
And then the base of the spear, where the shaft connects to the base of the spear, where it is its widest, that is made of bone, which is the bone of Ymir. That's legendary. It means, oh man, no wonder that the being that everything in the realms were created from is the solid base of the spear's point itself.
Yeah,
that's so cool. And then the rest of the gold of that spear is made of Rheingold.
Okay, the purest thing.
The purest gold in the
purest, strongest thing in the Norse mythology. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Interesting. Cool. Well, and then also it'd have to be like something legendary, like in Ymir's bones, because Yggdrasil is like unbreakable. Like, so how are you going to get like the gold to stick to it unless you just stick the pole into gold, and like that just may not work. Like, I don't know. Like I don't know how that works, but like it makes sense. Like the thing that would have to fuse them together has to be something that is quote unquote actually older than both. It's older than the tree. It's older than Rheingold. Mm-hmm. So that the fuser would be okay.
That's very cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. I also just find it hilarious how important gold is in like the Norse mythology. Whereas like you come down to like South America or even like North America, like the Americas and indigenous cultures, gold just wasn't that like precious. The reason so many things were made in gold was because it was a very easy metal to get, and it's very easy to bend and malleable. And so like to them, like the fact that they had like all these gold necklaces and like gold plated things and plates and chest armor and all this stuff wasn't too like, ooh, look, gold, it's so shiny. It's like this metal is really easy to make, and like, and when you have obsidian swords and blades, like the gold's just enough to like block it armor wise, and like not cut yourself, and so it's like you don't need heavy steel to go against obsidian blades and swords and arrows and so forth. But so it's just the idea that like gold is everywhere. It was just kind of like, here it is. They couldn't understand why when colonizers came over and like they go like, why do you want this? Like
this is the least valuable gold metal to us.
Yeah, because like to them, like topaz, opal, quartz, like rose crystals were much more worth something because one, they were in the earth, a lot harder to get out of the earth, and I mean gold was in the earth too, but it was like to them it's like gold used to be something you could just like walk into the cave and it's like it's the beginning of the cave. To them, to get to like topaz, you had to go deep in, and then like topaz, like it's very hard to polish. Like that's why you see it in like a lot of Native Americans, like in their earrings or like the bracelets or the rings, and it's like a single stone is like kind of polished, it's smoothed over, but you might still see a few imperfections in there because it's like it's really hard to work with. So it's like that was worth more to them than this. I can make gold rings all day. Want some gold rings? Okay.
Something archaeologists have found is when you see primitive people starting to work with tin, that is the sign they're about to discover gold working, is because tin is the other most prevalent and most softest workable metal.
Yeah.
And so once people have figured out tin, they'll immediately start to figure out gold. It's like one and the other.
That's interesting. That's fun. And then with the Norse, there aren't as many gold like veins up there. Like, gold is a little bit more precious. Brass and iron are a little bit more. Well, iron's real popular.
Oh yeah,
in the
it's
North.
everywhere. It just comes out of the ground.
Yeah.
They have so many volcanoes up there too. That it's just the amount of iron deposits all over that region. Like there's hills that are just that reddish rust color because that's where they're digging up all their iron, is that hill.
I know. That's also why magnetic north is north and so forth. So it comes to this point that way. It's also why if you get north of, I think it's Prince Edward Island, it might be somewhere in Canada. I think it's Prince Edward Island. You get north of Prince Edward Island, you can't use a traditional compass anymore because the magnetic north is now south of you or west of you, and so your compass begins to point. You're no longer, So it's like that's why there's true north and magnetic north.
And now that explains what I was seeing in that movie.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's why stars, moss, nature, it goes to true north, and magnetic north is a little bit off.
So let's see. That's Heimdall.
So that's Heimdall. So, yeah. So and then, so Heimdall. So yeah, he gets the spear, which is amazing from Odin.
Oh yeah,
Odin has the amazing spear. Heimdall gets the sword. Where does he get the sword from? Yeah. So coming into that, where does he get that?
So the sword is fashioned and then given to him by under the order of Odin, and then by dwarves as well. And so that's why the sword is so sharp. Is it's considered the design was. I'm trying to remember the terminology that blacksmiths and stuff using, though. It's probably not necessary, but he commissioned a design, and so the wisdom of Odin went into the design of the sword. And so it's going to be amazing by just, this is how it's designed.
So it's going to be forged with the wisdom.
Yep. And then the dwarves forge it with the maximum of their craftsmanship. And dwarf craftsmanship exceeds that of the gods. It's so good. And so, and the reasoning is ego and focus.
They're impeccable at craftsmanship.
Exactly.
Like that's their purpose. Like one of their purposes. Yeah, they're impeccable at it. So they're better than the gods. Because
that's why they commission them.
Spoiler alert, gods aren't impeccable.
Exactly. Otherwise, Ragnarok would not have happened.
Yeah.
And so he gets that sword, and that's why it's so sharp, and why its purpose is so clear, and why he doesn't use it for any other purpose. Like when he finally does in Ragnarok, when he does do his final battle, he doesn't even have that sword anymore, because every one of the gods, they eventually go through a situation where they all give up their best thing.
Yeah.
And then Ragnarok comes, and none of them have their best thing. And so with him, it's his sword. With Odin, it's the ring. With Thor, it's technically his hammer, but funny thing is, he's too selfish to give up his hammer, so he doesn't lose his hammer. Instead, he gets drunk.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so what he loses is his sobriety.
Gotcha. Okay, so the sword, just back up to the sword for a moment. So you have, so it has the wisdom, and then it's forged, and so that's why it can cut, and that's why, it's also precision cutting of like very, to use tarot for example, like it is the swords of that, like the Queen of Swords, the King of Swords, very airy, just straight as needed, emotional. And so like Queen of Swords, like, the queens are emotion, or there's in water, but they're also like, so the Queen of Swords is very airy emotion. So it's like, my emotions are so clear, I know my desire and purpose, I can handle this. And so, but he's masculine, he's got a little bit of that fire, that keen energy where it's like, okay, this is my will, my passion, desire. I have the wisdom from the thing that was forged in fire to slice. Okay, gotcha. So this is just for my own personal reference, but just like for anyone else out there that wants to like place these gods with a little bit of like understanding them a little bit too, you could say in some ways Helheim is like the king of swords. He's got some fiery decisions, some fiery willpower, but he's got the sword to be decisive.
Yeah, I would say so, and I want to point out to the scene where he fights Loki in the first movie for like a second, and Loki frees him with the Bifrost in the Marvel movie. Remember, he pulls out that sword and he tries to cut Loki down right there. Yeah. That is that sword, and he's only supposed to use that sword to prune tree branches. Yeah. So if you consider one of the gods as a potential tree branch, he was going to hew him down like a tree. And you look at the way he was swinging, that was an axe swing. He was like, you're going down. And he barely stopped him. And so I look at that and I'm like, okay, if Heimdall is the tree meant to prune things, he's going to prune you instead. That is not only a technical violation of what he's supposed to be doing, but it's also a fulfillment too. It's a violation because Loki isn't a tree of any realm yet. He's still just Loki. But at the same time, Loki is creating such a situation, it's going to screw up all the realms. So whack it down. That's a bad tree.
Yeah. I mean, it's the same as like if you're growing a tree and it's dropped a seed and you see a sapling, it's come out of the ground, it's midsummer and it's too close to the main tree. You're going to get rid of the sapling because it can't get as big as the other main tree. Like eventually they twine, but like by the time it catches up and does it, like it's just going to cause chaos in the roots. It's going to cause chaos in the growth. Exactly. One might choke out the other one anyways. And that's also something you point out there because I didn't realize that he was taking like an axe swing because I remember watching that part and I remember going like having like a small issue with almost like the way like a lot of them kind of fight in that first little bit. I'm like, it's not quite how those weapons work, but that was one that got me where I was like, if you would have overhanded that, like if you would have overhanded, it would have been much faster and he wouldn't have seen it because he gets it like, like you said, like a nanosecond before it hits him.
Yeah.
It's like, you would have had a whole actual half second had you gone downward like a normal. Wait, sorry, Mike. Sorry, ears.
With an axe.
Swords go straight down, or they come out on a 45 downward when you fight with a sword, and so it's like or upward. It's not a horizontal or like a 20-degree.
Yeah, so, he wound up and lined up an axe cut. Exactly.
Yeah, and so like in some ways, it almost makes me think that like him pulling the sword out isn't so much of a violation; it's how he uses the sword. So he could probably fight like a normal claymore, like he probably has in like hundreds of other battles, but when he chooses to use the divine ability of it, it's turning that way. It's the same as like Thor, because he could use the hammer for divine destruction or divine creation. He can turn it into an anvil, and but it has those two purposes. But it's like those are its divine purposes. He doesn't always use it in the divine purpose.
That's true.
Yeah. Okay. Seems I'm sure Tyr doesn't always use his arms in the most divine purpose.
That makes me think of how Thor is seen using his weapon in the stories and the sagas. When they talk about him ringing you like a drum with it, he's literally just smacking. When he lifts it over his head, he's about to annihilate something, and it's very specific that if it's overhand, you're getting the full force. If he's just whopping you with it, it's merciful. Yeah. You're probably meant to survive that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Interesting. Yeah, so he's not pulling out destruction energy in that moment. Okay. Awesome. There's another person we mentioned there that's kind of important on the thing. And I mean, I know like, we talked about this in our first podcast a little bit, like the days of the week and like how they play out as like important gods a little bit. And also all the gods in the days of the week, like do play a role in Ragnarok. So I mean, we've covered Tuesday Tyr and Odin. Most people know Thor. Freya was Friday. Does Helheim, does he fit one of those days, or is he just Heimdall? Sorry, Heimdall.
I think he was Saturday because Odin was Wednesday.
Okay.
Mimir's Monday.
And we only covered Ymir and like where like he's important. The wise. Okay, cool. So it's like here's like so who's Sunday, or like who are we forgetting here?
That's a good question. Let's see. Frey, the twin brother of Frey, and so he is represented by the heart that is surrounded in thorn flowers and fire.
Interesting.
We mentioned this before about how Christianity, that you will see the Cupid heart and you'll see the flaming Christ heart with the thorns on it, and that's your Frey connection that the Christians recognize and use to help convert all of the Nords.
Yeah.
And so remembering that, Frey is also given a sword that's considered to be another sharpest sword ever. And his whole thing with that sword is he does not like using it because he's a nice guy. He's about love. But as a fatherly love, he knows that sometimes you need to use it anyway. And so it's always about his belt, regardless of his unwillingness to use it. He finally does go to use it in the final battle against Surtur at Ragnarok.
Okay.
And he uses it specifically, he's forced to, because behind him is Yggdrasil. And he knows that with the flaming sword of Surtur, that if he doesn't parry these blades, he's going to set fire to the tree. So he has to use it now, and he's forced to. And let's see. And with that sword he had when he was still the Prince of the Vanir before the Nine Realms were ordered.
Okay.
And so I'm not sure if it's even mentioned the forging of that. It's just when I read the story, it was that he just had it.
So it's one of those like kind of lost parts of the story, but also it's along the lines too of like, it almost sounds like in his own right, like the way he kind of comes up, like it's just with him, it's part of him. Whereas like he probably crafted it at some point his own, or got it crafted for him, or something like that.
I'll bet there's an origin story of him that was on a runestone somewhere.
And maybe someone that's much more knows about this, that's really deep into this. If some professor of Norse mythology is watching, like comment down below, and let me know like where this where the sword comes from. I'm just curious. But I say in the sense of like just because everyone else is kind of crafted from him, but also like. The twin of Freya, like Freya has this whole, the stories, a lot of them, they kind of begin like, she comes on the scene, like we know what she's doing and so forth a little bit, but really she doesn't come on the scene until Odin sees all the other creatures and realms fighting.
Exactly. She shows up leading her Vanir, like riding cavalry across the sky.
Yeah.
It's just, that's your intro.
So her twin, like, he's got the sword, and like they just talk about he has it because like maybe no one that sees him knows where it came from personally, or also it's like, well, we've always just known him to have it. I keep referencing anime, and that's because I like anime a lot, but also like there's all these little hidden things that anime has sometimes. And I'm not saying that like Trunks from Dragon Ball Z is the same as Frey, but the same concept. Like we have no idea where he gets his sword from. Like where
shows
Trunks
up with it.
Yeah, because even when you do like the past of him and he's with Gohan, he doesn't have a sword. This sometime after Gohan dies, after he's become Super Saiyan and decides to go back in time, he gets a sword. But we know it's not the Z sword because he doesn't hook up with Supreme Kai till much later when Majin Buu becomes an issue.
Exactly. It's not Tapion's sword because that didn't even happen in the Cell Android timeline. Therefore, it's not that magic sword that was hidden in a box.
Yeah. So it's like, so what is the sword? Like, where did it come? Yeah. So it's so that same concept. Trunks just shows up with a sword. Frey just shows up with the sword. Gotcha. Okay, cool. So that covers our 7 days. I mean, the other gods we haven't talked about, like, that are the other days of weeks, like we've done that in other podcasts and so forth a little bit. And the other thing, like, maybe to wrap out, kind of our main characters that are going to play a role here is like we still have Loki. But I feel like that's almost like he's a bigger character, so is Thor,
Loki is given 2 daggers, which is perfect because if you take a sword that Heimdall has and you take the 2 daggers that Loki has, they're both natures of fire. They're considered types of fire, the two gods. And where Heimdall's considered the spiritual practice of working with fire, Loki is just the dual nature of fire itself.
Gotcha.
And one is given the sword that can prune the tree. The other one is given 2 daggers. And those daggers are meant just to eviscerate. They're not given who or what or why, just that they do what they do.
They are just fire. They are, yeah, okay. And they're given to, how's Loki get them?
They're literally gifted to him, like when he comes of age and Thor gets his hammer, they give Loki daggers too because he's jealous.
Gotcha.
And that's so it satisfies him because they're both adopted at the same time, and so they both have issues right off the gate with jealousy and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay. And then even that, like, the daggers gifted to him to, like, essentially like, okay, you can have some daggers too to calm you, but the daggers were already in existence, so they were already meant to be given to somebody.
Exactly.
And Odin has Odin's sight by the time Loki comes onto the scene.
Yes.
So it's not really like, oh, you're so jealous, fine, to appease you, here's some daggers. It's like, we knew you'd be jealous, and I already had these wrapped.
Exactly.
With your name on them.
Exactly. That comes back to my
5 years before I knew you existed.
It comes back to my idea of how much was still sitting around in the ashes of Ragnarok that they just went, oh, look, I remember this, and just went with, right? Like, how much was already there that they're just kind of repassing down versus the things that they newly forged? Because I look at Mjolnir. Mjolnir was forged with the Heart of Dying Star by 3 dwarves and then given to Thor later on, but it was technically Odin's for that male amount of time. And excuse me, when Ragnarok happens, we know that Mjolnir survives Ragnarok and is gifted to the sons of Thor, and one of them eventually takes on the name of Thor. And so
the cycle continues.
The cycle continues, but Mjolnir's already there in the next cycle. Yeah. And if Ragnarok's possibly happened or already happened, maybe this little disjunction is where Marvel came up with the idea of let's give him another hammer, and this one will look older but more like an axe.
Older and more like an axe, bigger. And then what? And so I almost wonder a little bit there too. Like, do we have the actual creation of Mjolnir? Like, do we have the creation of the hammer? Like, do we know that story?
It's mentioned like a couple sentences.
Yeah, like,
so
it's just kind of like that it was
created. Sagas, yeah. Where the thing about a saga is people think saga just means story. No, a saga is a compilation of stories in and of itself.
Yeah.
And so you're already having stories compiled and losing things, and then those sagas get compiled into books, and then you lose things.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. So they're abridged of an abridged.
Exactly. Post-apocalyptic stories.
Well, I mean, and it makes sense too. I mean, it's the same concept of like oral stories. Eventually, when they got written down, there are some stuff that was lost because it's been orally given, and then okay, now it's written, and then now written. But it's like, okay, let's gather all the scrolls together, let's put them into a book. This is like one of my issues with like the King James version of the Bible. Like I think the Bible has a lot of great metaphors for it, but if you read like the Masonic Bible or the Hebrew Bible, it doesn't have the King James like compilation. So like there are extra things in there, and there is a reason the Catholic Church has the Apocrypha that has like all these extra books. We're like, well, we're just gonna put these over here because King James is like, I like them, but I don't want to say their doctrine because it gets too confusing.
Some of them are a little out there, exactly.
Yeah, a little out there, a little like doesn't fit our current norm, society. I don't think the people can handle the truth, so I can't give them the truth. I can't give them all the wisdom.
The people can't know about dragons.
Can't know about that. Yeah, like stuff like that. Which is like that same thing of like I get it, like hold some stuff back, but it's not like they could be like it's not like they could come to King James and be like, hey, King James, I'd like to buy your course for deeper knowledge. And he's like, I will now give you the other books. Thank you for buying into the deeper knowledge. Like, it wasn't like that. It's not like how like on YouTube I give away a lot of stuff for free, and then a little bit deeper step in is like, yeah, come coaching, come into some courses, come like and get, the next, layer of it, that then level up. But at the same time, you can take all the free version and get a great life.
Exactly.
So the reason I'm bringing that up is like that's my problem with the Bible. Is like it's compiled and there's things a little bit missing out of the stories. And then also the whole concept of being, that's why I like the Masonic or the Hebrew Bible better, because it's like it's straight from that language into English, not from Hebrew to German to something else and then eventually to English. And German doesn't translate super well into English anyways, but if you go German into French and then into English, like you lose some stuff. So that's the thing with the sagas. But so Mjolnir almost kind of fits that same thing as the Sword of Frey, whereas like it's in existence. Like we know it's been crafted, but we actually don't know if like when Odin gets it, like who had it before Odin did. It sounds like kind of don't know who had it.
Yeah, there's question there because it survives a Ragnarok, and therefore nothing's supposed to survive Ragnarok, and yet somehow that hammer does. Somehow the golden rings survive something that even the Asgardians before couldn't figure out what they were used for. They assumed they were part of some kind of cosmic game, but even in all of the sagas of the gods, they still couldn't figure out what these were. Those survive Ragnarok, and the new gods find them and go about trying to figure out what they were used for.
Yeah. So there's like these few things that just kind of like carry over. Like, like certain things that can't be destroyed, energy can't be destroyed, and like using the dimensions as an example here, like the hammer of Thor, like Mjolnir, like it kind of represents like it has destructive and creation energy. So it's kind of like the fifth and sixth dimension. Like there will always be creation, there will always be destruction. They go hand in hand. So you can't destroy destruction, and you can't destroy creation. You can destroy things that have been created, and you can prevent things that have been created from being destroyed. But you can't destroy the vibration of creation or the vibration of destruction. Just like you can't destroy the vibration of love. It's always existed and it's never going to end because it's always existed. Creation and destruction have always existed. And so the rings, like we don't know what those fully are, but they play in a role too. Like, there's purity in it. And so those could be quote unquote, another vibration that can't be destroyed. Similar to like time and, at some point I think that's something I want to dive into is actually like list out, like just personally, like maybe, share it with you guys too, but like that idea of like, these are the vibrations I realize that have existed always and like can't be destroyed. Because I mean like, joy is something that's actually created. Like the vibration of joy does exist in the universe and always has, but joy isn't happiness. Happiness is like laughter or like enjoying something, having fun at a game. Joy comes from actually having sadness and hardship that creates joy. So sadness and joy or sadness fits in, and because you have sadness and happiness, that creates joy. And so it's like the idea too, like even though there's an abundance of the joy vibration and everything, if we were to back up to the original vibrations that existed, I don't think joy has always existed. Love has always existed, but because love and creation and destruction exist and some of these other vibrations that always exist, then sadness comes into play, and then joy comes into play, and I'm just saying like the emotions we feel, the vibrations we have, the thoughts we have, like a lot of our feelings that we feel personally come from our belief systems or thoughts, and the belief systems that come from thoughts are just thoughts we think all the time. So if we constantly think like if we remember a delicious meal and we're like that's good food, then we have the belief system that restaurant is a good place. But someone else could have had a shitty meal there, and that restaurant's a shitty place. So then, it's not truth.
That's really interesting. The way that hits me is, think about it like, oh well, it's just twirling around in my head now. That's so cool. Yeah. Keep going while I I make sense of my words here.
So just like that concept of like when I say it's not truth, what I mean by that is it's like it's somebody's truth. And it's somebody else's truth that the restaurant is good or bad. Tastes good, doesn't taste good. But together it makes capital T truth, which is sometimes the restaurant makes great food. Sometimes they have an off day. It's just food. But guess what? The restaurant hasn't always existed. The food hasn't always existed. But the desire to survive hasn't always existed either. But the desire to create has.
So it's like saying I'm happy, I'm sad, but I found joy.
Yeah.
So
or
it's
I
like
created joy.
even in our the way we speak, it's almost like it's even coded there in a way where there are these things that I I become this when this happens. But there are other experiences that I locate, I find, I attain. I can actually grasp this thing, like joy. Even in our own nation's foundation, they said that the pursuit of happiness is what they tried to enshrine. And so happiness or joy is one of those things that you would pursue, not that would just be there already. And so, or at least the joy part, you would pursue joy. And then you go into like the religious texts. I think it was the LDS people that claimed that their God said, men are that they might have joy. And so that's another possession, that they may have it.
They may have it.
Not that they are it, but they have to have it. It has to be something that they have to find and possess. And I think that, you're 100% right about that. When I think of those golden rings that they locate, I personally think the golden rings are representative of innocent curiosity. Because the gods, that's all they do when they interact with those rings is innocent curiosity, trying to figure out what are these. And no one ever has an answer, but that's all they do when they're not working and they're not playing and they're not Valhalla smiting each other. And when there's nothing else to be done that's work related, they're literally just riddling out these rings. It's very cool. And if that's innocent curiosity, it's amazing how that must also be a primordial force in the cosmos that never leaves, because it survives Ragnarok every time.
I think you just hit it right there. Curiosity, like this forever curiosity. Like, I want to learn. I want to figure this out. I want to grow. So like the vibration of curiosity, which equals I want to grow, I want to learn, I want to know more, is probably one of those vibrations that's always existed. Like curiosity has always existed as soon as, because creation exists. So you can say creation exists. Once it creates anything, curiosity is immediately created because it created something. So that's why it survives, because it improves like the desire to figure something out, to grow, to make it out. Like it's like, you actually have, a kid and so forth, and like I don't, but like nieces and nephews. But like I remember, like you play board games with kids. Like even though in your eye they roll a 7. In your vision, you can see that spot 7 where it's at, but it's important for them to go 1, 2, 3, 4, count it out, because then they will get to the point where you're at. You don't want to just be like, I don't have time for this. Like, you don't want to rob them of the learning, of the curiosity. That's why I love like doing nature tours, because I take people out to see stuff they've never seen before, or they haven't seen in a long time. And to see, full grown adults, 30, 40, 50-year-olds, 80-year-olds have a childlike curiosity about the sunset or a bison is really cool to see. It's like I would never want to rob them of that and just be like, here's the pictures on my phone. It's the same, right? Like, no, go see it in person, see it breathing, feel the anxiety a little bit, the healthy anxiety, the respectful nervousness, the beauty of a sunset, the beauty that, the peaceful and tranquility that only like the peace and silence of nature can give you can only come from going and experiencing the thing. You would never want to rob someone of that experience. So maybe that's why they exist. There's the experience that is necessary to be there. And then one thing I wanted to say about the Constitution, like the idea there, like, we written into our foundation of America's Constitution, and some of those ideas, like you can tell they're divine come in, and then you can almost see where like the human blockness comes in, like where the humanness comes in. And I would say in that example of like pursuit of happiness, like, men are given, men meaning humans, all living beings, they don't say it that way, but in the spiritual sense, we're going to say it that way, are given life, the right to be alive, the right to exist, the right to experience, liberty, the right to be free, the right to make free choices, the right to live however you want, no matter what anyone else thinks, the right to live without being judged. You're given that. And the pursuit of happiness, I feel like that's almost like that's where the humanist kind of block comes in, where it's like, yes, you do have the right to pursue happiness and to seek after it. We can't give it to you because you have to create it yourself. So that is like, it is honorable there, but it would almost say like, it's very important that it's there. Like you can go create it, you can go find it yourself. But I would say like it either needs a fourth word in there that would be like all men are, all humans are given life, liberty, love, and the pursuit of happiness. Meaning love exists. You have the right to be love and to feel love. You are worthy of love regardless. Now with your life, your freedom, and your love, go create something with it. Go do something with it. You have the right to go. You have the right to go create something with those 3 aspects. So as I say, the humanists didn't get it wrong by putting the pursuit of happiness. They just left out that love one. And the reason I say that is because like when it comes to anxiety in this world, or stress, or depression, or a lot of the blockages that people have, I'm not saying they're all stem from one thing, but the thing I've seen the most common in all the retreats and clients I've had, and I don't know how many hours I've spent with people in retreats and clients, but the most common thing that repeats the most is, I'm not worthy. I don't deserve X. I'm not loved. I can't be my real self because then I won't be loved, because the real me can't be loved. So let me pretend to be something else. You see this in high school. You see this in middle school. Let me pretend to fit in. Let me put on the mask. Let me go to the job, put on the mask. In dating, let me be the person, let me posture up and flex so this person will like me and want to date me and marry me. But then it's like, but that's not the real you. And so then issues happen and things fall apart because people are, it's like, oh, you're not who I thought you were. Well, no, they weren't who you thought they were because they weren't being them. And so what I'm saying is like, that's the biggest thing I feel that causes a lot of like hardship in life is this belief. I'm not worthy. I don't deserve love, and people won't love me if I do act the way I do deserve. Like, won't love me for me.
Yeah.
And it's like if that was taught from birth, you deserve to be loved, and that's just part of like written in there. I'm not saying like the Constitution is the all and like it's the set vibration, but it's interesting how these things that like in collective create a ripple effect. So our Constitution creates a ripple effect for the United States of America. Other constitutions and other things in other places create a ripple effect in other places. But we also have another negative ripple effect from the Constitution. I know that like, we're talking about Ragnarok and Norse mythology, and we're going down a literal rabbit hole here. But just one thing I want to point out there is that we say in the Constitution too that we are adherent to two laws: God's law and nature's law.
Yes. Right
there, we drew the division between God and nature. Nature's here, God's here. That's a ripple effect that has collectively affected America for the last 200 years. Look at the capitalism. I'm not saying capitalism is wrong, but I think we're doing it disharmonically.
Yeah.
We're destroying nature because, it's easier to make a bunch of money off of a cattle farm, so let's wipe down half of a forest to create hundreds of acres of cattle farm because that creates more money, and then cattle are actually easier to raise, and they're easy to give hormones to, and they're so submissive. It'd be easier to do that than, I don't know, have a team of hunters that get food for everybody.
Ugh.
Like imagine all the money.
Yeah,
so much more expensive, but at the same time, would it be? Like
so much more goes into the factories and the refrigeration and into power
and power. But at the same time, all that refrigeration happens with the cattle. Like there's millions of cows born and killed every year. I'm not trying to get on the bandwagon of saying like we shouldn't eat cows and we shouldn't, that's not the bandwagon I'm getting on. I'm just pointing out the capitalism disharmonicness of destroy to create the easy path versus true capitalism energy of like, how would we use what we have and improve it so that it exists? But that's that separation. God's law, nature law. God is man. Nature is separate from us, but they're actually the same. We're not separate from nature. And so this belief,
it creates a massive disharmony. It explains how, you'll see like, I'm going to build this all natural food store, but I'm going to completely asphalt pack this ground around it for 300 yards in every direction and wipe out the nature around me.
Yeah. I'm going to build a gift shop in the nature. Let me build a gift shop in the middle of the forest.
Like wipe out the forest. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Versus, how about I make a path? How about I take an animal's pathway, like a pathway that animals are already using, and I just throw a little extra dirt down that pathway, so that pathway never grows grass on it. But it wasn't going to grow grass on it anyways, because animals keep walking on it. Like I'm sure if you go out in nature and like you look at like fields or trees, like you'll see areas where you can tell animals walk consistently, and grass doesn't grow as tall there. So as humans, if we just put a little dirt on there, then that path gets to stay for us and the animals. And then we're not tearing down anything to create a road, to create I'm not saying anything wrong with roads either. I'm just, this concept we have that we're separate from nature has caused some issues. And you see this a little bit, I don't know if the Norse quite believed this, but I know they believed in they did care about the next generation. It was about, how do I show up for my current glory moment, but also kind of the concept too of the kids matter, they're the next thing, they matter. And we see that too in our society, but in a lot of the indigenous cultures, especially Native American traditions, there's this belief of 7 generations past, 7 generations in the future. You are, the belief is you are the manifestation of the last 7 generations. That is who you are. And you are responsible for the next generation, whether you have kids or not, the very next generation. And then what after that, you're responsible to you're going to influence them. You're going to create a ripple effect for them. But you are actually more responsible for the 7 generations from you. So it's 7 generations when you're dead, forgotten about. People might remember your name, depending, but that's not what matters. You're setting up a world for that 7 generations from now, which might be the manifestation of you, but also the idea too is this global community idea of what I do now is going to affect the next 150 years, and that mentality builds. Just I think we talked about this on another podcast about Japanese business, how they set up 1,000-year plans and 100-year plans. And when a new CEO takes over, they might adjust the 100-year plan, but they take a look at the 1,000-year plan and see if we're on track. And they might make a couple little tweaks, but generally the 1,000-year plan is not adjusted. It's tweaked The 100-year plan might get a little bit more, whatever, but it's all to lead to the 1,000-year plan. So they build companies
charting that course long term.
So they built companies with the intention that they would exist in the 2000s. They're building companies now that will exist in the 3000s, and the companies that already exist now, they're thinking about, well, how will we look in the 4000s? You know,
the way the Nords kind of had that with father to son to grandson was they would, because the goal was not to live old enough to see your grand and great grand and none of that stuff, because you're not
going to see your great grandchildren.
Exactly. And so what they thought of was, if I set my son or my daughter up in such a way that they can exceed my accomplishments, then I've done my job. And so there's no, well, my kid's got to be well enough to take care of himself. No, it's he's got to be able to outdo me. And if your kid as a teenager is already starting to outdo you, you've done very well, and he's got a really good future. But if you're one of those parents that's like, come on, man, you should know this, like to everything, your kid's just like, oh, I don't want to. Viking would be worried that, oh no, he's not going to be able to even get close to what I did in my life. I need to do something about this. Mm-hmm. And so that is their viewpoint. It is a matter of legacy, but because they didn't live long lives, they didn't see 1,000 years, but they did see if my kid is not better than I am, well, the family line ends with him.
Yeah, exactly. Gotcha. Yeah. And you see this a little bit too of like the strength and the willing power that like you see. Like, I know like Hollywood movies are there, and they're, it's Hollywood, but they're based on some of the real things. And like you see this in I just lost the name of the show, but it's Uhtred, son of Uhtred, and like he gets captured. He's a Saxon, but he gets captured by the Vikings. Gets raised by the Vikings. He's raised by Ragnar, like a different, it might be the same Ragnar, but several generations. Like this Ragnar's not keen, but his family gets wiped out. The Ragnars get wiped out, and and so he's actually referred to as Uhtred, Ragnar's son. He's the son of Ragnar's son, and he has his brother who is Ragnar's son, who's the son of Ragnar. But there's a point where they get attacked, and their whole little house gets set on fire. The grandpa that's in there that actually like can't walk anymore, like the wife gives him a knife, and then she picks up a knife, and it's the intent that he will now slit her throat because they're going to come in and rape her or kill her. She's going to die in the fire anyways. So, quote unquote battle, you get to die with the weapon in your hand with the intent, but you're being impeccable knowing I'm not going to let myself get raped, and I'm not going to let myself get burned by fire. So then take me out. So he slits her throat. But then he holds the knife, and like the Ragnar, that's actually the Ragnar that's like the dad, like he comes out and goes through the firewall and gets caught on fire, and he fights people while he's on fire. The guy that can't get up, can't walk, like he just sits there and holds the knife until they come in, and then he tries to take out whoever he can. But it's that impeccability of like, well, the fact that I've seen my grandchildren is super rare. Mm-hmm. And I'm already aware that my grandchildren are better than my kid. So I can die with glory,
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
There's this part of it too, like there's this little scene in it where that first episode before the grandkid dies, Uhtred's not his direct son, but like when they tell him that like he's going to marry this girl, and he kind of like he's like, oh, I thought I'd have to marry like a Viking to be considered a Viking. Both Ragnar tells him like, you are a Viking, you are my son, but then also like the grandpa like later says something too where he's like, boy, come here, and he's like I'm proud, to call you Ragnar's son. Like pretty much like he's the one that calls him Ragnar's son first. Like pretty much being like, you're not blood, but I can die happy knowing you're better than I was. And it's super rare to have a grandchild.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So, which I almost wonder, like I said, like the bloodline ends with you if you're not better than me,
Yeah.
Like how many might have gotten a little taken out during that time. And, yeah. And so I've gotten enough rabbit holes here of like little side stories about all these things. But, so we kind of know where Loki's daggers come from. We know where Thor's hammer comes from. Just to kind of like wrap this one up, before we dive into official Ragnarok, are there any other major characters we haven't talked about that we should at least give a little background story before we go that direction?
Check my notes, because as far as Ragnarok itself, let's see. I want to make sure that when Ragnarok starts, there are the gods will pair off, the primary gods pair off.
Yeah.
And their fates and who they fight and the way they fight are so integral. I want to make sure we hit all of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we got it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so we'll step in. And of course, if anyone comes up that we haven't talked about, like we'll go down that rabbit hole of like, who are they and why do they matter and so forth.
Mm-hmm. There's a few in Ragnarok that were either banished, exiled, or on an adventure that you'd have to have read 3 of the other sagas to know that that's why they're not directly present. But as it wraps up, they show up.
Gotcha.
And that is why. And so it's not really important to really get into it, because when they show up, it explains in how they show up why they were gone to begin with.
Gotcha. Cool. Beautiful. That's great. Cool. Awesome. So I think that's all I've got for this one. It's been super fun. Excited. These have been great journeys to go down. And so yeah, with that, peace. Drink more water. Get more sunlight.
Love and peace.
Skål.
nothing fall, but the stories live on in the hearts of the scouts, their legacy strong.